welcome back to Mental Health in Tech. It has been a while. I think Skalk Neetling and I have been kind of preoccupied by various things. I think he underestimated just the enormity of starting a new job. But yeah, and I think he also went through the process of figuring out, he has too much hay on his fork and trying to figure out what's worth pursuing. And I guess I went through something similar. But turns out mental health in tech is one of the things that's worth pursuing. So here we are again. And I invited a friend of mine called Kate van Niekerk, and I just want to give a bit of a preamble before we start, because I just want to frame why I really wanted her on here. Is because I think she has her own personal stories and stuff that she can share, but also she is part of an organization called She Can Do that kind of works in the space of mentoring people, but specifically mentoring people that are looking at entering the UX field. And they also do surveys and stuff. So I think there is some interesting points that can be tied in on a bigger scale in our conversation, especially when it comes to the dynamics of the kind of job market at the moment and so forth. But yeah, so without too much, I said that I'm going to try and keep it concise. So I already broke that promise. But yeah, we fall, we stand up again, and here we go again. So luckily Kate has listened to some of the episodes before, so she knows the format. She knows that we start saying that, how's it going currently with us, before we start. So I'll just dive straight into it. So I don't know, going better in some ways on this side, going worse in other ways. I think some stuff in my personal life has kind of cleared up a bit and is a bit better now. I think I was in a way worse space 2 weeks ago, like a really low point. Some of that has cleared up a bit, but now it's like the work, I'm really far behind on my work. My wife was sick for a while, so I had to do all the kids stuff like school runs and whatever. And I invoice per hour, so those hours need to come from somewhere. So I have a lot of catching up. So that's not fun. Like not sleeping well, very stressed about that. But yeah, I don't know. What can you do? All right, so I'm happy to hand over to other Skalk. He can give a bit of a rundown in terms of where he is at the moment, and I think then we can go over to Kate.
Nice, thank you very much. Yes, so it has been a while, but I'm glad we're back. It feels weird to do a podcast again. To also not go off on a ramble side note. I think a very similar position, but I think if you asked me 4 days ago, I would have given a different answer. I think the last 2-3 days have been pretty good. I've been struggling with focus and I spoke to one of the GPTs the other day as a brainstorming thing and just said this is how I'm feeling. And basically what I said is that I have this feeling where all these ideas and thoughts and things I want to do, not have to do, some have to do's, but a lot of want to do's, but it's like, my arms are just down there, and to pick them up and put them here to just type on the keyboard was just too much. It was just I don't know. And it was I couldn't connect the excitement and the want to do things that's in my head with physically just acting on it, right? And doing stuff. And it's frustrating when that happens because, again, there is have to do's and they start falling behind, which causes stress and that debilitates you further. So 4 or 5 days ago, I would have probably not been in the best space, but the last 2-3 days have been pretty darn good. So I'm going to say for the moment, I'm doing really good. No complaints. I have some complaints, but I'll keep them to myself for the moment. And with that, I'm going to cut it here and hand over to Kate.
Thanks. And thanks for having me on. So not doing great. It's all relative, though, so I wasn't doing great yesterday, so relative to that, I'm fine. But my levels of anxiety right now are so high that since I woke up today, I have been stressing about how I'm going to answer that question. because I knew you were going to ask me. Yeah, so my answer, as it is most days, is not great. I'm going through a bit of a depression, and that is informed a lot by the fact that I'm prone to these things anyway, but I've been unemployed for 5 months now. And also I'm a crier, so I might cry.
Makes two of us.
So I'm unemployed and I'm feeling very unmotivated because I've gone through so many job applications and interviews and podcasts about how to improve like my job prospects and how to do interviews, and not in a good place because I have a lot of debt and I support my mother 100%. And I do have a husband who can support me, which is great, but he can't support two of us. And so with I sort of have this extra like ADHD kind of paralysis where there is so much to actually do to pull my life together that I can't get off the couch. And I stay up too late, I wake up too late, and then I feel like I've wasted the day. And it's a cycle of, I'll get all of this done tomorrow, it doesn't get done. And then there are just sort of little things that are just bothering me and that are stupid things. Like I burnt my nose with a blowtorch the other day. Much better now. And like I have a sty in my eye and I have a wrist brace because I am aging and I have hypermobility. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm very fortunate that kind of I'm not in a position where I have too much kind of like issues around job security. But for what it's worth, I can relate to it because I used to be in a place like that before. So my background's actually in visual arts, and there was also just like a long period of my life where I was. I just couldn't find work, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I think my mind is kind of wired in a way that I'm always trying to work the problem, which I think is also part of the problem. Is like it's very hard for me to just let things be. I'm trying to make progress on it. But I very distinctly remember like there was a point where it's like, I don't know what to do to make this better. I don't know. I can only spend so much time refining my CV. I can only spend so much time reading up about kind of like, whatever, cover letters or my LinkedIn profile or whatever. Like, I don't know what to do. And I can't just sit here and wait and wait and wait. And I can definitely relate to that, although I'm not in that position right now, fortunately.
Cover letters are the bane of my existence. It's just like also swallow time.
Yeah, and they're also the bane of someone who's hiring's existence as well.
Yeah, but I think like one of the tricky things, especially, I don't know, maybe for some people it's easy, but I found for me those are always the challenging things, is having to introspect into yourself when you're writing these things and trying to keep it to the point, but also constantly wondering if maybe you left something out. That kind of thing where you've sent the resume and you like wake up in the middle of the night in the sweat and like, oh, I should have mentioned this thing. Oh, I hope this could have made all the difference. And you're like, probably not. But in the moment, it feels like now everything is just a mess. Yeah, and also when you also don't get the job, it's also because I remember I used to also run another podcast called my CDM Network podcast, and that was where I talked to a lot of junior developers. And something I heard a lot from them is not getting feedback if you weren't hired or you didn't get up to the next stage. And there's just like, sorry, but we're not going to move forward with you. End of the conversation. And you're like, that doesn't help me. Why? Did I do something wrong? Did I mess up? Did I leave something out? Is there something I can do for the next time maybe? And it's just like, boop, ghosting. There's nothing at the other end of that. And I know that was very, very frustrating for people to do. And the longer this goes on, where you can't find work, it just becomes so much more, because eventually, like we humans do, we start pointing the finger back and saying, it must be me. Like, surely there's work and I'm just not getting it. So something's wrong with me. And no, most likely it isn't. It's just, we're in a weird place right now in the world. That's why I'm kind of putting that, compartmentalizing that separate when I answer about how I'm doing right now, because if I look at what's going on in the world right now, woof, I'm not doing well. But leaving that aside, I'm okay. But these things impact us daily. And the last 2 weeks, I think, I've been seeing that stream on LinkedIn going again, where it's just one person after the other saying, looking for a new role, looking for mass layoffs here, mass layoffs there. And I'm like, man, no, because it's just so hard to see. And I was there like almost a year ago, where, I was at a startup. I was already struggling financially because of just life and bad decisions, and then got laid off. And it was at that time where tech hiring and tech was just like the general feeling was, I'm glad I'm not you, because wow, getting a job is tough right now. And I was like, oh shit, because I have a family to take care of, like you, people depending on me. And now what's going to happen? Or because life just sometimes feels so brutal and unforgiving. Like, you make a silly mistake or make a bad decision, and now you end up on the street, or you end up without medical care, or all of these things, right? And it's extremely, extremely stressful, especially if there's people that depend on you. Is like, why are we in this situation? And you're like, I'm trying my best. So yeah. Sorry to hear that.
I actually, I'm at this sort of existential like crisis stage, because I'm like, why won't anyone hire me? And then like, what is it in the world that I can do that someone will hire me to do? And then it's like a spiral of like, people are like, oh, maybe it's a blessing in disguise and you need like a career pivot. I'm like it's not a blessing. Like, and what is a career pivot? Do I now start something completely new as a junior? Do I need a qualification? Like, do I have money to get a qualification? Like, it's at this point, I've been saying like I will do almost anything that someone will pay me to do, because it's also with the job applications, as you're saying, there's a template for like the response, the rejection response. It's always, thank you for your application. While we think that you have a very strong CV, we've decided to move forward with another applicant who fits our criteria better. But we'll keep your CV on file if there are future opportunities, which of course there won't be. And in terms of trying to get feedback, sometimes I have tried. Sometimes it's clear that this is a mass sort of email, and sometimes they say like, unfortunately, we cannot give individual feedback. And there's been one time where it's been useful, where someone gave me like sort of hard to swallow kind of criticism, but I could work with that. Another time where it was really validating, but also irritating. He was like, no, there's literally nothing wrong with what you said. We just decided to go with someone internal, which is also just a bit irritating, because you are always going to go with that person,
No, it's tough. And, like I've found myself on the other side of the hiring table. And yeah, it's tough. And I know for a fact that sometimes I've gone through the process, because it just takes so long, because there's so many applications where I've just said like, okay, this person is good enough. I can't spend any more time on this, even if there's someone that's triple as qualified as this person and triple as experienced and can add double the amount of value. Like I just can't. I have other work to do. Like so I think there's a big problem here, where first and foremost, because just the entire industry is being squeezed, even the people that are hiring are under pressure to to just keep up with their own jobs. And, they don't want to spend time doing the hiring thing properly because, I still have my sprint I need to, to do. I have my sprint items for next week. And hiring someone is not a sprint deliverable. And the other thing is as well, what it means to do it properly now is just so insane. And I shared some of that previously. It's just I got within a week I got 500 applicants. How do you meaningfully even go through all of that? So I just go through it until I find someone that's good enough, and then I'm like, cool, let's just go with this person. I can work with this. And then the rest is just mass emailed, unfortunately. Yeah, I just want, because at the very least, I just want to let people know they didn't get it. But it's tough, and it's hard. And I'm saying, I know it sounds a bit patronizing saying don't take it personally, but I can give the caveat that that's something that I'm actively trying to work on in my own life, is to not take things personally in terms of my own self-worth and so forth. So that's something I struggle with, whether it's just comments that people make or whatever. So the struggle is real. I know it. But it is not. It's objectively not something personal. But it's hard to not take it personally.
Yeah, objective doesn't apply when you're not being paid.
Yes,
it's not like I'm personally oh, you think I'm a shit person or whatever. But there's only so far that I have my own sense of self-worth can take me. Which is why feedback is really good. But also, I don't mind it. Also, if an application, if they say that they, if you haven't heard from us in 2 weeks, then you can consider that you haven't made it through or whatever because you've warned me. But I think my worst thing is a couple of months ago I got contacted by somebody, sent an application. Following morning they contacted me. I went through 3 interviews in 1 week. One of them was with an HR person who was asking how much I expect in terms of pay, and I met with a client. 1 week. Then silence.
Yeah.
Just gone, wouldn't respond to my emails. It's just leading me on.
No, but that I will explicitly call that out and say that's gross. I see that happen with some of my people that I some mentees that I mentor as well, is that they're asked to do take-home assignments and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And then they ask for feedback on it, and they don't get any feedback. And to me, that is just gross. And honestly, if you do that, you're a bad person. Period. I'm willing to say that, because you are expecting someone to provide you hours from their time that they could have spent with their family, that they could have spent doing other things, but you're not willing to give them the same thing. That's exploitive. And maybe you shouldn't have people do take home work that early on in the process. Maybe just and I think that's just lazy interviewing. That's just I don't know how to interview, and I don't want to spend time on this. I'm just going to give them take home work.
So I think,
which is why just to complete that thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why I'm a very firm believer in paid take home work. I always pay for take home work, because if I give take home work, it should actually be something that I'm this will be of value, and I'm willing to pay for it. But that's not the general sentiment. But yeah.
So maybe also this could maybe be a sort of segue into this. You can do stuff, because I know what a lot of people are struggling with.
Yes.
I have lost my train of thought.
No, I was talking about.
Right, take home things.
Yeah.
So one thing is juniors sort of applying for jobs, or not even just juniors, but having an assignment. I don't mind the assignment thing, but then it just also feels like sometimes you are doing free work, not just like it's lazy for them, but they can actually use the work that you've done. And someone that I was mentoring applied for a paid internship, eventually didn't get it, but they literally used her designs that were part of her take-home task on their website. They used her exact designs. And my feeling is not only is it the take-home work an issue, but having a good portfolio is problem. Like it's something that people struggle with. It's time-consuming, and sometimes it leaves people out because if you are, say, a single mother and you are juggling so many things, now you must find time to create this beautiful, perfect portfolio. And I don't have all the solutions for this, but I struggle. I do struggle with that. But also, I'm a researcher. I'm not sure where to start. I feel like there's many branches I could take here, but maybe tell you about what I've done, like where I am, what I do, what she can do, and can talk more about this because it's a big issue.
Sorry, I didn't fully cover what exactly she can do is, so I think you can give a bit more context there.
Yeah. Okay. So also just briefly, my unemployment. So my personal background is I've studied anthropology. Nobody knows what that is. Couldn't get a job, so I decided to do a postgraduate degree in anthropology, and that made me even more unemployable. And after years of working in different sort of spheres, I, by complete happy accident, serendipity brought me into UX. And because of my anthropology, research has been my strongest sort of thing that I've done. But also the world wants generalists now, or the places I've worked before looking for generalists. I'm not a generalist, but anyway, it's a different discussion. So, excuse me. She Can Do basically is an organization that we started as a meetup. We started as Ladies at UX, which is part of a greater sort of organization, international thing, which has chapters all over the world. But we sort of started growing into something different. And because we started having so we just had meetups, and there were more people coming in who were kind of looking for practical experience and looking, for a way to break into the design industry. And so we started having events and more practical series. We had a portfolio building series and stuff that were sort of had a particular focus. And then we also, you need funding. So we also, not just for the funding purpose, but we went through a process of registering as a PBO, as a public benefit organization, which means that anybody who sponsors us can claim back from tax. Getting sponsorship is a whole discussion, but it's very difficult. We are struggling with that. So anybody who wants to sponsor us, call me. But that's that kind of, we started moving in a direction where we specifically we still maintained the workshops and events. We made sure that every event was a workshop, not just a talk. So not just an expert who comes and reads out a Medium article or something. It's something practical that you can go to work tomorrow and you can actually implement whatever it was that you learned or something the night before. And it created also a really strong community. And that's always been very important to us. So currently where we are is we've moved away, although we're moving back a little bit towards having more events. But COVID and everything, the events we weren't doing many. We tried the remote thing, didn't really work out. We started a training program, which is our biggest kind of initiative. And it's going from strength to strength, and it's actually become really successful to the point where our trainees have gotten jobs based not solely on that, but we're a recognizable organization. And what that training program is we get women who are trying to break into the industry. So it's not that they know absolutely nothing about like UX or design. Maybe they've done like a boot camp or something. They have a basic idea. And we have NGOs or NPOs or small companies that don't necessarily have the money for like a agency or a expensive design team or something. We take on their website. They want to redesign their website. We take that on, and we have a 6-month cohort where we go through. They have sort of sessions and assignments, and we go through the full process from like stakeholder engagement requirements gathering to discovery research to ideation, defining a problem, prototyping, testing, and eventually they have a presentation to the so-called client, and they get a certificate that they can put in their CV, I guess, and they have something they can put in their portfolio. And also, I mean, obviously I've been talking about women, so it's always been specifically catering to women, because that's what we're about, is empowering women in the design industry and tech industry, but mostly sort of I use design as an umbrella term. And that's our core to our thing, is empowering women and enabling them to advance their careers. So our main thing right now is that training program. But the other thing, I mean, the last time I saw you, Skulk Benter, is at the UX South Africa conference, where I presented some research we did. We looked at the state of women in the design space, workplace in South Africa. We did a bunch of interviews and a survey, and put this report together with great difficulty, because I went through my own sort of burnout, and it was like the process that was longer and more difficult than I expected it to be, but it's a learning opportunity. So we came out with this report that had more impact than any of us imagined it would have, and that sort of covered kind of the key issues that women experience. So in terms of getting the actual work done, and their personal experiences in the workplace, and leadership, and sort of a mix between professional and personal experiences in the workplace. So I don't remember where I was going from, the beginning of this ramble.
So basically, just what she can do is, I think that's a pretty good answer, and I think it's also because of that actual exact survey that I actually thought it might be good for you to kind of have a conversation with us. Because interestingly enough, you are kind of now finding yourself in a similar position where you're trying to find a job. But just back quickly to the UX South Africa thing. What's interesting to me, and this is something I started talking about, it was really great. It was let me say it was interesting. I don't know, you went there for the workshops, but I ended up doing all the workshops, facilitating all the workshops that. Because everyone else, Skalk Neetling was also supposed to do one, but then he got COVID. Other speakers just bailed and whatever. But so one thing I do remember, so I tend to find myself in very hot water very quickly, because I think one thing that I've found is that in the more technical side of software, I think people are more open to raising contentious views and kind of challenging like it's almost like it's almost like a rite of passage almost to some degree. Like if you look at anyone out there kind of like publicly who's like a senior software developer, they probably have some specific hot takes that they have that they fight with people all the time. And I sometimes forget that, and when I go to like more UX focused conferences and so forth, people are not as open to having like those contentious discussions. And but I do remember like there were a couple of points where I kind of was having discussions with people, and then I realized like, oh wait, like I think I should back out a bit here. One of them was around AI, and I just don't believe the current, I don't believe AI has any influence on the current state of the market. On like, I don't think it's any threat to UX as a field or UX. I think if anything, I think it just coincides with some market forces. But if you think that AI is a threat to your job, I think you misunderstand the value that you provide or can provide. Because all the things that AI is really good at is stuff that doesn't really provide much value, and it's just ceremonial and just, artifact creation and so forth. But the other one is, I do think one of the reasons why we're seeing, so obviously everything is being hit hard by the current tech bubble bursting, even I know software, like senior developers that are struggling to find work. I've definitely hunkered down a bit in terms of my existing contracts and stuff, and not act. So previously, if I didn't enjoy working on something, I would figure out like, cool, can I just move on to something else that I enjoy? And I've definitely been a bit more conservative in terms of, cool, this is just, let's just keep a good thing going. But I do think like what we're seeing, why it's being affected disproportionately by everything that's happening, why UX is, I don't actually think user-centered was ever a thing. I'm 100% convinced companies never gave a shit about users. They only care about users insofar that it's a proxy for money. Companies are, by definition, profit-centered. And what's happening now is, I think a lot of UX was purely kind of, I like this term that Liz Spannenberg used, which is like design washing. Which is like you do a lot of ceremony, you do a lot of artifacts, you do a lot of like things, and then it kind of seems like, oh, cool, like this is user-centered now. You kind of, it's kind of baptized and user-centered through all these artifacts. But like I've seen so many teams where their user personas are stuff they made up. It's like, what?
Don't get me started on personas.
Yeah, like what's the point of a persona if you're just making it up? Like, let's then just say, Mr. Bossman, what do you want? Don't even go. But I think like, so a lot of that was ceremony to kind of make things. I think it was more inward facing than outward facing. I think it was, a lot of it was, you kind of have this term of security theater. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there's this notion, I don't know how much credence I give to it, but there's this notion that a lot of the stuff you do, for example, at the airport, like scanning stuff, taking off your shoes or whatever, is actually not very effective, but it's to put you at ease, to make you feel more so like, okay, cool. They're checking if there aren't stuff in your shoes, and they're like, you're not allowed to take water on, or you have to switch your phone to silent mode or whatever, otherwise planes can explode or whatever. A lot of that is to make you feel that this is under control. We have the security things. There's kind of theater for the passengers, and I do think a lot of what I saw out there was kind of design and UX theater for the team, to make the team feel we're building something valuable, we're building something that people like. It was kind of almost a morale thing more than having intrinsic value. And now that the money tap has kind of dried up a bit, like, that is really like so I think that doesn't mean that like there isn't being good UX being done and so forth, but I do think that a lot of companies really don't care about UX. And now that the ones that don't care about it is kind of not spending money on it anymore, now like it's just like there's a massive divide in terms of actual work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I have like two examples of that. Sorry, Kate, I'm going to hand it to you right now. I think two examples for me of the whole thing of companies not really caring, but doing it because it is a theater, or it looks good, or it looks impressive, or it makes you seem like you care, is if we look at the state of accessibility on the web.
100%.
If people truly cared and truly did their user research and understood their users, we would have a completely more accessible and inclusive web. And the second example of this is, as soon as Mr. Orange Man said DEI is a stupid thing, the companies were just like, yeah, and they just canceled their DEI things overnight. Whereas,
also, sorry, I want to interrupt you there. The full term, and like people leave this out all the time. It's a DEIA actually.
Yeah.
People very conveniently leave out the A part. The A part is actually part of the acronym. But you can't say, excuse my language, you can't say fuck those disabled people. You can't say
they're trying.
You can say fuck those people with a certain skin color or whatever.
Probably not even allowed to use the word disabled now. So, I mean, in terms of like Trump has banned all these words and cut all this research. You're not allowed to use certain words. So, imagine if you say disability, it probably means you care about it. In which case, cut it out.
I mean, the comments that was made around the reason why the plane crash happened was blaming disabled people working at the FAA. It's like, how does that have anything to do with anything? You're out of your mind. But before we go down this rabbit hole, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kate, with what you were saying. I just want to make clear, like,
I'm just going to plug that hole because, like, this is going to be a 3-hour episode if we start.
I don't even. If it's not talking about Trump, I will just spend the rest of the time just crying. There were so many things I wanted to respond to. One of them was that we're talking about the value of AI. So I think also what you said that, but I wouldn't say that the AI, people also misunderstand the value that AI can have. That's not in like replacing what you do. But I think when people are like, oh, AI is replacing our jobs, I do think there's a place for it. But so in research, I think that AI could be like an assistant. So it might be able to make processes a bit more efficient. And I did this, I tried so hard with like ChatGPT to try and make things more efficient with couple of research projects, and I just end up wasting more time because what I was trying to do is get AI to tell me what the important points were, but it can't because it doesn't know my objectives. It doesn't know what I actually want. It doesn't have the full context. No matter what you tell it, it doesn't know, but it can help. Like it did help a bit with like transcribing. Transcribing is not always perfect, but and being able to, now I've gone blank, but I do think there is some value in it. But also, I think that there's something about like human-centered. No, I don't know. Being human-centered in a business is kind of a myth. But I do think, and I know sometimes I get funny reactions to this, but like my big thing on like, say, a research project is the beginning of the project. Like you need to speak to stakeholders. You're not talking about what methodology or whatever you're going to use. You need to find out what this product is, who the users are, what the limitations are. And you need to have business in that room, and marketing and engineering and design. And people don't like when they say this, but you have to consider the business interests here. If you are working for a profit-making company, you can't ignore the fact that it's a profit-making company and that whatever you design, it's got to achieve that business goal. it's all very well to like put out all your ideas and make beautiful designs and whatever. Also, obviously, not enough communication between designers and developers, because then we make these beautiful designs and the developers are like, literally can't build this, and then everybody's sad with one another. But like, you have to consider that. You can't ignore that. And I understand, like, sometimes it's shitty to think that, like, well, companies are forced to be somewhat human-centered so that they can keep their customers happy or whatever, to make money off them, although sometimes they know they'll make money anyway, so they don't care. But I think that I don't mind working in a profit-making company. And I think one has to be realistic about the parameters. But I also think it's a big problem, and it's a big problem that something that came up in the research is that the number one obstacle people face is stakeholder buy-in, and that also included like number 2, 3, and 4, which is like no budget, no time, whatever. And there was I'm jumping around, but yeah, but before I forget, there's a really great article, came out more than a year ago, and I must find it actually, but it was basically, the message was like, stop gaslighting yourselves, like, to designers and also particularly researchers, because it relates to something you were saying about kind of the theater, the security theater, and whatever. Like, because there's this lack of buy-in, you are just like constantly trying to prove your worth, when actually you should know that your worth should, be able to say, this is my worth, and my value is my time, and so you need to pay for that time, because this is the value of what I do. And we're constantly trying to like prove our worth and show, ROI and all of this stuff, and doing things faster and whatever. And it's actually an exercise in like gaslighting, because we're like thinking like, okay, there's something wrong with what I'm doing, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that business is like making you feel like that. And I don't know exactly what the solution is, but there was, I think they spoke about in the article, like one potential way to move forward from that is to actually create stronger long-term partnerships with sort of important parts of the business. It sounds like a dream, but like, instead of it just being us and them doing a service for part of the business or for a client, it's sort of, we know we're on the same team, we can build a relationship together. But I always think of that gaslighting thing, and it's across design. It's not just South Africa. So I think it might be a bit worse in South Africa, but I mean, like, never mind design, like research in particular. Also, never mind like UX writing, like content. But what do you need research? Like, we know our customers, we know what they need. Know what their problems are. And sometimes research just means usability testing, and it's just a box ticking exercise. And you do a whole fancy report, and it goes into a black hole. And, especially in corporates, I think one of the biggest problems is like different layers of management. So there might actually be someone higher up who might actually be interested in your recommendations, but it will never get to them. What was I going to say about? But
for what it's worth, I know 100% resonate with that, and like, I think designers talk about this a lot, but you see it everywhere. Like, you see it in coding as well. So one thing that I've found in my career is that, okay, so maybe back to my discussion about companies not giving a shit, is that there are so there's two types of companies. There are companies that actually care about building a quality product, And that is a reward in itself. This sounds very sentimental and so forth, but I've worked at some of these companies. I do work at one of these companies right now. It's a small team, but like we can probably leverage what we're doing way more and make way more money and whatever. But like, like we make enough money to cover everyone's salaries, and we can, all of us get paid pretty decently. But like, I think first and foremost, like we really like enjoy making a good product. And we're not looking at, because like companies are and we're not looking at leveraging that product to extract as much value as possible. But I think the other thing is as well, like by pure accident, we also landed on a specific product and a specific user need that turns out is a big thing and people are willing to pay for it. Whereas I think a lot of companies, what I've found, the companies that are continually pushing you to do things cheaper, to do things with less hours, to get things out faster, to hire less people, those companies are not even convinced of their own value that they're providing. Because if a company was convinced about the value a feature that they're building has, they would not mind paying a lot of money for doing it properly. What I've found is where they just want you to push it out, just get the code out, just get it working, just ship it. It needs to be out next week. It's like they don't know whether this is valuable or not. They're not even convinced that it's valuable, and they just want to get it out there, throw it at the wall, and see if it sticks. And I think like there's a big part of that, like a lot of this. So like I think the danger there is you shouldn't generalize, but also like there is a like I do find, unfortunately, like that a big majority of companies don't care about the quality of their product insofar that it translates to profits. But there are companies that where there's just like they just want to build a good product. So one that I can think of as well is like I think Basecamp's a good example as well. So Basecamp is a company that I kind of like admire a lot in terms of they really want to build a really good product, insofar that they've actually written a book about their process. Like, how do we figure out what features to do? Like they've done a lot of talks, and I know some of the people there and so forth. And so there are companies like that, but the vast majority of companies are just looking at making that line go up, making the line go bigger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've got a classic example of that, and I was unfortunate, I consider it now, to be in the front row seat of it, and that is a little company called Mozilla, who used to.
I was curious whether you're going to name them by name, but here we go.
Yeah,
hold on to your butts. Here we go.
It is what it is, and I don't think anybody that's truly honest with themselves can disagree with this. They used to be a mission-driven company who built products that they and the community loved. And that's not even putting it, stretching it. Like people truly loved Mozilla and the products they made. And it showed. I think Firefox was one of the best browsers for a very, very long time, until they lost their way, until they wanted to see the hockey stick go up for different reasons. There's a lot of various reasons why they wanted to see it. And eventually they got all consumed by that. Now they're also in a bit of a desperate situation because things are falling apart around them, and they've put all their eggs in a primary colored basket, a Google basket, so to speak. And there are threats to that income now. And as a result, the people who cared have left, and Mozilla is making one after the other bad decisions, because the people who are making decisions now aren't the people who were there who truly cared for what this company was trying to achieve. And they are looking at it through a profit-driven lens, and therefore they are destroying the value that Mozilla provided to the web. And as a result, people are abandoning it en masse. And this has just happened again a week ago when they decided to introduce a terms of service where they're basically telling you in uncertain terms that we're going to start selling your data, but we're not going to, and then we're going to mess around with the language a little bit to make it seem a little better. forgetting that they're an open source company and that people can find this on GitHub and call them out on their bullshit. And now people are leaving this product en masse. And the only truly successful product they still have is Firefox. And that is now going down the drain. And I feel truly sorry for it, because I myself was very, very proud to say I worked at Mozilla. Now I loved the company I fell in love with. I'm not a fan of the one that exists today, but it's not the same company anymore. And this is how like profits and not caring about your users, not caring about the people who care about you and your product can destroy a company if you honestly just say, what do you know? We know what you want. You want a VPN, not a browser. It's like, oh, come on, man. Focus on what's important to people. Listen to your users and not just ask, because that's another thing that a lot of companies do, is they put things out on LinkedIn or a survey saying, we want your input. No, they don't. They just want you to have a sense that you have some kind of influence over the future of the product. I mean, Arc is a classic example, the Arc browser. It was an amazing browser. And then one day the VCs were probably not happy. And like the people just went, you know what? This is actually a shitty product. And we're like, what the hell? This is a great browser. And they're like, no, we're going to build this AI thing. And we're just going to, but don't worry, we're still going to keep this other one going. And everybody was like, yeah, sure. And now it's a dead browser that every now and again we get a Chrome bump. And that's pretty much it. So everybody's abandoned the damn thing again. So, it's when people seem to care, but not really. And it has real world impact.
I also, gosh, there's so much to say about that. Just my blood boils just saying that, like LinkedIn surveys and stuff. But that's also, as a researcher, as a mostly qualitative researcher, I'm very, very careful with surveys, because also companies, business likes them because you can ask a bunch of questions and get a whole lot of answers, and then you've got numbers. But it's very difficult to ask the right questions. And I can give you an example in this research that we did. So also, if people think you can do a survey and then do follow-up interviews, it should never be that way. You do a set of interviews, see what's coming out, and then validate or invalidate that through a survey if you need like numbers to back it up. So a lot of our research had to do with experiences of discrimination, whether present or not present, and there were two particular sections about microaggressions and sexual harassment. So with microaggressions, which is not a term that everybody uses or everybody understands, but basically it's little things, maybe little comments that like don't exactly they're not like overtly kind of discrimination, but they're little things that sort of related to something like your race or gender or something that sort of eat away at you and are more kind of insidious, because over time it's almost a kind of gaslighting. Also, you start to believe certain things about yourself. So in the interviews, I could ask a question like, have you experienced discrimination? And a lot of people say no. But then they went on to tell stories. Everybody had stories about like being spoken over in meetings or excluded from meetings, or little comments that were made about their race or sexuality or whatever, and really inappropriate comments, or those things fall into definitions of like microaggressions and sexual harassment. Also, sexual harassment is also a misunderstood thing. If I say, have you experienced sexual harassment? Hopefully most people would say no, because based on the fact that when you think sexual harassment, most people think like touching, and I mean like a more extreme version. But sort of inappropriate comments about like physical experience or sexualized comments or something, that's also sexual harassment. And when someone makes a vulgar joke or whatever that makes me sound very prudish, and you're not comfortable with it, And the sort of, oh, it's just a joke, whatever. Can't you take a joke? That's harassment. That's sexual harassment. So what I did in the survey, is instead of saying like, have you, let's say with the microaggression, have you experienced microaggressions in the last 12 months? Because I could see that people understood a label in a certain way. I said, have you experienced any of these behaviors in the last 12 months, and listed a set of things that fall into that category, like being spoken over in meetings, sort of inappropriate comments about your race or something. Now I can't remember all the things, but they were things that would fall under that definition. And that got a lot of kind of responses that people had experienced that. But we didn't call it microaggressions. And then I asked sort of what are the primary things that you think those behaviors were based on? So it's also not like, have you been discriminated against for being a woman? It was, categories of like gender, age, race, religion, neurodiversity, which came out pretty strongly, which doesn't surprise me at all, because that's my personal experience. And like, so it was, you can't just send out a questionnaire that's like, have you experienced discrimination because you're a woman or whatever? And same thing with like sexual harassment, that quite a big proportion had very uncomfortable interactions that they probably wouldn't necessarily call sexual harassment. And it wouldn't like microaggressions it's a very serious thing, but it's sort of often like intangible. So people feel like it's not enough to complain about, like it's not worth the trade-off of whatever it means to complain. But I have to say, like, saying all of this, and from what you're saying, both of you are saying about creating a product that you love versus like sort of just getting things out the door, is the thing that came out really strongly is about the culture of the company. As an anthropologist, I find the word culture nerve-wracking because anyway, when we were asked things like how forgot how it worded it, but it was about what is the best way to tackle like non-inclusive behavior in the workplace, which is also another term that sort of helps to like discrimination is often like just a hard word, but the thing that above all is creating a workplace, an environment of respect and diversity. And ultimately, it doesn't even matter what you're creating or what your job is. Like that your work environment is actually the most important thing. And that does speak to like respecting what you do as a profession, but it's also like feeling like you can express your views, you can speak up, and also that you can feel safe that like there will be consequences. Probably like certain things will not happen in the workplace, and that there will be consequences if they do. Like right down at the bottom of those priorities of what is effective are things like workshops, like just awareness, like harassment awareness workshops or something, because they're obligatory. People go to them, they forget about them. I heard a horrific story of like a woman who was at a corporate, did a workshop where she demonstrated what sexual harassment was by like having a volunteer and like touching them and like doing the things that are harassment to show what harassment was. And people walked out. They were like, this is not okay. Like this person can't be here. So in a way, it kind of caused some like solidarity amongst people, but and also things that are like forced communities, like in the workplace. Here is a group for women that we have created for you. So if it's a group that you have created and it's a good space, then that's cool. But when it's sort of forced on people instead of creating like a good environment, then that's the problem. And maybe it's a product that you don't care that much about. Like maybe it's even a big corporate. I mean, I've worked in corporates, I've worked in small agencies, and I've worked in consultancies. And I mean, I first got into UX when I got a job at Deloitte, and that was because I was looking for a job and doing anything. And my friend gave me a job application for a user experience designer at Deloitte, and I was like, Deloitte, this is accounting and like design. What is that? An anthropologist. And I applied, and they were like, we love anthropologists. They knew I knew nothing, and they hired me on potential, which hardly ever happens. And I had the most amazing team. And it wasn't Deloitte that was like the greatest. They were terrible. But it was my team that they fostered. I will never have another team like that. I will never have managers like that. No offense intended to anybody else, past and future. It's going to be my manager, but I don't care what products we were working on. So yeah, just to say, like, it's not just the product that you care about; it's the people you work with in the environment that's created that affects everything, and it affects the quality of the work you do.
Yeah. No, 100%. So there's this thing called Conway's Law, which basically says that the structure of software is kind of just a mirror of the way the company that builds it is organized. So you kind of see echoes of how departments and people and whatever interact in the company with one another, and the nature of those interactions mirrored in the actual product itself. But I would take that even further, which is like even things like accessibility and all those things, like respect. Like, and this is the thing that I always say, like, is that there's no way that a company that doesn't respect their users is going to respect their employees and vice versa. I think there's a really, and this is some of the more interesting conversations I had at UX South Africa that wasn't as contentious. Is I think I actually mentioned this in the final panel discussion that we had. Is that like I think there's an intersectionality here that we're missing, that we need to start catching up on. Like there's an intersectionality between accessibility, between actual people with like low-end devices, like products be like how your data is treated, how employees are treated, contracts. All of that, there's an intersection here, and it doesn't help if we go on and on and on about accessibility. It is getting worse every year. Period. It is getting worse every year. But I think that's not working clearly. So, and I don't really know if like a more intersectional approach is going to work, because it almost feels like that's way more daunting. It feels like now you're taking on society itself. But like I think that's the only hope here, is that we look at, like, at the very least, not even if we can't cultivate those type of teams and organizations, at the very least celebrating the ones that actually care about all these intersecting things. Like I did mention, like Basecamp. I don't know what Basecamp's hiring practices are. I don't know how they treat their users. I don't know any of that. But given what I've seen from how they treat their design process and the integrity in terms of how they make decisions and so forth, I would probably be able to confidently guess that they probably treat their users and everyone else with that same level of integrity. it's very rare that you find a product where the staff is being treated like shit, but all the users are happy and they love it, and whatever. So, but yeah, we probably need to kind of start thinking about closing this up. One thing I do want to ask is, and I don't, and I think this is useful to ask you, Kate, because I think, so I kind of, my background is in fine arts, but I kind of majored in kind of sociology as part of my fine arts. So, and I think you, with your anthropology background, there's a clear understanding that a lot of what's happening in our psyches today is because of material realities and forces. And you can't completely go and say, okay, the how to fix mental health in tech is everyone should just learn to meditate, or everyone should just, and I think that's what's missing a lot of the articles out there. I don't want to name and shame, because I do think this still contributes. But I do see companies posting stuff about how to take care of your mental health and so forth. And I don't want to completely dismiss that, because there are personal things you can do. But I do think that's a small part of the picture. But then on the other hand, I think there's also a danger in saying, everything's effed up. And, I don't know why I bleeped myself there. I was saying fuck everywhere else, but everything's fucked up, and it's not my fault. I would be happy, and I would not have all these anxieties and be depressed and whatever if it wasn't so fucked up, the world. And how do you navigate that space? I'd be curious to hear your answer to that. Navigating the space of having a danger of over individualizing it and being I just need to learn how to deal with my anxiety better, but then also at the same time not going to the other end of the spectrum and saying that I would actually be a super well-adjusted, amazing person if companies just weren't this shitty, which I also know for a fact is not true. There's some behavioral in the way I'm wired, some behavioral things that I need to work on in myself as well. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that and how you navigate that space.
Honestly, it's a difficult question that I don't have a proper answer to. What I will say is, yeah, sometimes when there is, especially, when I've worked at corporates where they have sort of well-being, mental well-being, whatever it is, surveys or tips or things, it feels a bit sometimes well, we gave you these resources, or we're going to work you really, really hard, but here's a, guide on meditation or whatever, or here's an article that says the best way to, combat depression is to go for a walk and eat well. But well, what if I can't get out of the bed and I cannot make myself a meal?
The insidious part about that is that once again, there's a part that's victim blaming as well, paradoxically.
Yes,
it's shit, I'm anxious about my work. I should learn how to not become, I'm not a good employee. I should learn how to not be anxious about my work. It's no, don't give me unrealistic deadlines.
It's just another thing that I failed at. I didn't go for a walk. I didn't eat a good meal today. I can't even do that. And I don't. So on a personal level, I struggle with this because I am too open about everything. When I say too open, I'm too open for employers. I'm not, I don't think, and I often say things that other people wouldn't say, and I get myself into trouble. And one of those things is about my ADHD, because once you say you have ADHD, then in most places that you have put a target on your back, because now effectively for employers, often what you've said is I'm a liability because I'm telling you I struggle with deadlines and doing things on time. And I, sometimes interrupt and I'm not very organized or whatever it is. And it's so hard to know, like, a lot of people they won't disclose that sort of thing at work. I have recently started looking at, because companies are actually, it is classified as a disability, and companies are actually required to provide reasonable accommodations. And one option that I've looked at is to actually declare it as a disability, so that I do actually have support at work, so that there is like recourse. So, that is a risk also. But honestly, it's a very hard question because it depends on the company. I guess, like it depends on the support that they provide. And I think having that community, look, I think, not to toot my own horn, but She Can Do is a space where we try to, so we have our events that we're doing more and more of. They're not just about skills, like hard skills. I don't like the hard skills, soft skills thing, but they are also, about soft skills, so like things that you deal with at work, and
taking feedback,
and also
those type of things.
And things that aren't like design specific. So I think having that space, I don't know, it sounds quite wishy-washy, but having that kind of safe space is really important. But it also, like, I want to say it's effective, but I don't know exactly how effective that is, because once you go back to your job tomorrow, what is there? It goes back to, okay, look, I've got a friend in the UK. He's a designer. He had a proper mental breakdown. He worked for a company that was like, don't worry, go home to South Africa, take as much time as you need. He took 6 months off to recover, and they paid for him to go to South Africa, and he got better, and he went back to his job. And it's like, I don't know how one finds a place like that where you can also be safe saying, I'm having a breakdown, and then the company will not only like not like persecute you for that, but that they will actually help you get better because they are invested in you. I can't imagine there are many places like that. Well, anywhere, but in South Africa, I've sometimes also when you do like those mental health assessments and stuff at work, I worry about who's seeing that. That maybe it's just paranoia. But I worked at also a company it's sort of a big, let's say financial services, medical, and all sorts of insurance products. Anyway, but like you could do this like mental health assessment, and then you have access to resources. And I felt like, I'm not sure I want to do this. And then I filled out this questionnaire which said like, you have poor mental health, and someone immediately called me, and I was like, I didn't ask you to call me. Don't call me. Tell me if there's a resources. But I don't think I'm answering your question at all, because
no, that was amazing. No, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. So I think, like, firstly, like that thing about like the mental health survey and so forth. Like, I think whether what happened with that information is irrelevant. I think the fact that you had to think about that is symptomatic. That you had to be like, I don't actually even feel safe filling this in. And I do think, like, also back to the previous, I'm going to try and summarize my thoughts here, but I think back to the previous, because my wife already gave me like the look. So back to your previous point about the microaggressions and all that stuff and so forth. And I do also I know sometimes when people hear that, and this might just be ignorance of my own privilege in the situation. I'm completely open to that, but I do also I understand how sometimes when people hear that, there's some resistance to that, because in a workplace, if you're under a lot of stress and you feel people are putting demands on you that are unreasonable and whatever, and then having to be told shit, now you need to double think, you have to think and filter, and now I'm shit, but what if I say the wrong? But that's not what it's about. It's about having a space where if someone feels like you did something that wasn't cool, that they can raise that and you can chat about that. That is the answer. If you feel that what this demands of you is to never do that, I've said stuff that have been interpreted as racist. I've said stuff that have been interpreted as sexist. That wasn't my intent. And sometimes it was unreasonable to take it up in that way. But it doesn't matter. I made someone feel that way, and I've been fortunate enough that they could chat with me, and we could chat about that, and I'd be sorry, I'm sorry that you felt this way. This is the last thing I would want to have happen. But it's so rare that's actually even the case. I had someone who worked under me. He's a foreign national, non-white, so he's not European or something, from an African country, and we spoke about kind of something, and he told me about his previous job, and he's yeah, they were so mean to him and whatever, and I'm I did what? He's yeah, it's because I'm black. And I was what? And he's yeah, no, I think it's because I'm black. And I'm dude, did you talk to anyone about this? And he's no. And to me, that's wild that you're yeah, these people are mean to me and they're treating me like shit because I'm black. But sucks that it's this way, it's even if that was not the intent, how do you work at a company where you can't raise that and be listen guys, I'm really feeling like that, I don't know, it's bizarre to me that you don't even have an avenue to raise that.
So one thing that I said to people, because after we released that report, there were women who came up to me and sent me private messages who were thank you so much for doing this work. It means a lot. We've all had this experience. We didn't even talk about salary transparency, which is a whole other thing. And one of my takeaways, or something that I said, is as a kind of recommendation, is talk about this stuff. I was listening to one of your previous episodes. Someone was find your people. I think it was Casey. If you never say anything about, if someone's constantly putting you down and you never say anything, then you don't realize that every other woman or black person or neurodiverse person, exactly the same thing is happening to them. And often that is the case. And, I don't know what then happens beyond that, but whether you, but then you even if that behavior in some way continues, you have some support. Yes. I know that that's also a risk, because I know from personal experience working at a company where they pushed me out, can't go into that, but it was a very bad situation.
No.
I wasn't the only person that happened to, but I thought I had people that I was talking to, that I was confiding in, and what the company was doing is actually trying to basically, that you don't have friends at work. It's very rare, because at the end of the day, people are going to protect their jobs more than they're going to protect you. It's very unlikely that someone's going to actually risk their career to defend you. And once you've left your job and then you both, you go to a braai together, then you can be friends or something. But when you're working together, it's very risky. But there's still space for that sort of needing to speak to people, because if you don't speak, then either speak up or speak to a person who you see that this is happening to them. then nothing can happen. The behavior just continues, and you don't realize you're not alone. Also, so yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. It's always a risky thing, but like we have to talk more about it. And as you said, like there has to be a way of like being able to safely, like talk about intersectionality. That was a huge part of this research, because people who like are not just having the sort of experiencing stereotypes about being women, but say you're a Black woman, you've got a whole other set of stereotypes. You're already, as a woman, you're like, oh, you know, oversensitive, you're not assertive, you're aggressive, you're bitchy, or whatever. Overlay that with being Black, and you have like this angry Black woman stereotype, and it's even more reason to dismiss you. And even when we say like, oh, we want more female leaders, like they also, we compartmentalize our prejudices. So great, you have a female leader, but turns out if she, maybe this leader is white, she dismisses Black people or neurodivergent people. And so there's like, I don't know how to do this, but there's a responsibility on leadership here. Like leadership ends up being like the most important thing here. So, I mean, what I can say is like leaders need more training, and leaders need more education and stuff about this. And like when we talk about this, upwards trajectory of our careers, management is not necessarily the next, we treat management as though that's just the next level up. Not everybody's cut out for managing other people. And the corporate ladder, which was designed by white, male, neurotypical, American men in the 50s or whatever, it was designed they designed that, and it's still designed that way, and it's not designed for a whole lot of people. And there's still, I mean, if we went on, I would get a lot more passionate about this, because it is the system that is broken. It is not the person. Yeah. It is the whole system needs to be changed. And we land up putting the onus on people of like, how do you navigate this or whatever? Shouldn't have to be on you to navigate this. The system is the problem. But, got to be realistic. That's not going to happen. But, fuck the system.
Yeah.
Who's with me?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think one of the big things is we're missing long-term vision. People think only in the short term, which is one of the reasons why the other company probably let the other person take the 6 months, because there's a long-term vision of the value they bring to the company. And having a healthy whole person come back is much more valuable than trying to push them over the edge in the short term just to get the last bit of blood out of the rock. And then the other thing is you need trust between people. Then you'll be easier to speak up. And then people need to actually care, not just say they care, but actually care. And the signals the world sends to us right now is that all three of those things are impediments and they're weaknesses, and you're best for not showing them, so we mask them. And so there might actually be people around you that care, but they're too scared to show it because of what it might mean for them. So, if more leaders in companies indirectly then can have more of a long-term vision and see the value in people and truly care about those values and the people, and then create trust between these people so that they can actually feel okay about sharing. Because you shouldn't be scared to say I have ADHD. That's why. But it's a reality. People mask all the time, and it's tiring as hell. So, yeah, I think we need to make those things not be impediments and weaknesses, but actually strengths. But it's a societal problem. It's a systemic problem. It's not going to change overnight. But if enough people push back, maybe.
One thing that I found, and I can maybe say this in closing because I really need to run. I'm happy for you guys to continue, but I need to jump off. But so one thing that I've found is whether it's accessibility, whether it's being open about mental health and all those things, is what I think needs to happen is people that have leverage need to lean into that and stop being cowards, period. Okay? If you have leverage at a company and you're like, they can't afford to lose me, They invested to keep me here. They invested to have me on this product. Okay? You need to lean in and be, I will work on this. I will work with you. But these are my conditions. Okay? And if you really want me, then we are going to prioritize accessibility. You're going to hate it. It's going to mean things take longer. It's going to mean that things are going to cost more. But that's a bundle. Like that comes with me if you want me. And I think the problem is people that are in positions where they are in high demand or whatever don't leverage. They don't want to antagonize the company. So they do. I think people that have some type of leverage should use that leverage to impact things downstream. I think that is the only way. This is the only way I ever see any movement on accessibility. If someone far up enough the chain goes, I know there's no business case for accessibility, I will go on the record and say that. I don't think it's clear that there's no compelling case for business. There's not a perceived business case for accessibility. Otherwise, accessibility wouldn't be in the state that it is right now. But what needs to happen is someone needs to say that I know this is against the interests of the company, but it's also in the interest of the company to have me on this product. So it's a bit of give and take here. I'm going to force some things that you don't want to do to give you what you want. And I think that is something that needs to be normalized, and it's something that should be celebrated. Unfortunately, a lot of middle managers and people are just see themselves as they just execute what gets passed down to them. And it's their job to see it instead of, I think we need to normalize people in the middle of the chain pushing back and celebrating that. But yeah, I need to head out. I don't know if you guys want to end it here or whether you guys want to continue for a little bit still.
I think that's a good place to end it.
There we go. All right. Cool. Thanks so much, Kate. I'm sorry that I have to stop so very abruptly, but everyone's waiting on me to eat dinner. So
this was really good. Okay. Thank you so much, Kate. It was really, really good.
I'll just send you, now that I'm amped up, I'm just going to send you lots of voice notes and write an essay about this.
There you go. Yeah. We can maybe even do a part 2 for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I'd love to do a part 2, but that's because I love talking a lot. So.
There you go. Scott loves editing, so there we go.
Especially about accessibility. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, guys. This was great. I will hopefully speak to all of you soon. All right. Cheers.
Thanks so much, folks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.